We've got the 63 Corvair up on jack stands today. And what you've probably already seen is we need to do shocks and the springs along with it. The car is rear engined and those springs hold all the weight. And those springs are very saggy, but the main thing is those shocks. With the rubber gone and the bushing, this car makes lots of noise when you go over a bump. And while it's louder inside the car than outside, my wife refuses to use it for the extra work that she does because it sometimes causes problems with the filming, with the recording of voices and everything. If they want to have you in the shot, those types of noises cause problems. So that's our project for today. Let's get to it. I know that doesn't look like much. In fact, it isn't much of anything. There's nothing there. There should be a rubber bushing around it. That is the shock. Let's see if I can get you a better picture of it. That is the center portion of a shock. It goes up through there. And you can even see some other spacers, as it were, there on that. Let me move you over here. Should look a little more like that, although that one's bad as well. I'm going to do you a little whoop-de-doo here. You can see the rubber coming out on that one. So that, along with those, are what we have planned for today. There are some things coming later. Give you a little preview of it. See that? That is the underneath of the Corvair. They really need to be replaced. But like I said, that's for another day. You know, I have a full-blown 60-gallon air compressor and a line set to come all the way out of here and air guns to go with it. But I bought it right before this is not the only brand, but right before a number of these battery-powered ones came out. And they're still so much easier than running the hose and everything out here. Alright, here's what needs to happen, including the crossbar, which is down below here. I can't really reach that right now, but there's just 2 bolts to take that out. Up on top of the shock, there's also another bolt, or nut I should say, that needs to come off of that, so that can then release the shock itself. And it looks to be like that may be all that's holding the rear drum and drive assembly up. So I've decided to try something. I'm going to try and let the shock loose. I'm taking some precautions. We got the jack underneath the hub here, but I'm going to try and do this without letting the brake line go, because that will create a whole nother can of worms. We've got to take apart a bunch of stuff, including the vent hose for the heater, and take off the brake line, which then means I'll have to bleed the brakes at least. Hopefully nothing would break. But we're going to see if we can let this down with the jack slowly and hopefully get it to a point where we can just take the spring out to begin with instead of taking everything apart. There we are. We're on it all the way. And we really put a small wrench on the top, or we're just going to put one of the greatest tools in the world on there. I think I'm maybe a little bit off there. One of the greatest tools in the world is the vice grip. We're going to put that on that shaft. So we don't have to hold it. Don't get me wrong, these things are already sprayed with the slippery stuff, so they come off very easily, comparatively speaking anyway. Here's that. There we are. There's the nut that holds it into place. And the washer. There's the rest of the bushing. Hopefully I'm not in the picture too much here. I've got the nut off of the top of the shock, and I'm taking the 2 bolts out of the bottom of the shock, which will allow me to hopefully get the shock pretty much out of the way. And then we can lower it down with the jack. And I'll see if I'm smart and efficient or just ridiculous and destructive. There's the shock. See, isn't that lovely? Hopefully the new shocks have those. I think they do. But that was what it was causing most of our problems here. Don't try this at home. was not the easy way to do it, but it is done. We're on the other side here. Kind of worked out a system now that works. I'm going to turn this like that, so give ourselves a little room on the back. If we jack this up just enough to take the tension off it, then we can undo the shock, which is what is holding it up there normally. We can undo that and not let it just fall down and break that hose off. Once again, we've already sprayed these before with some of the slick stuff. Yep. Rubber's getting in the way there. Going the wrong way there. There she is, the other old shock. This one, other than not going down all the way, now it really isn't in much good shape either. Alright, we've taken everything else off. Let's see if we can lower this down a little bit. You can see that brake line going straight, but honestly I felt them and there really isn't much, there isn't really any tension on it. I'll let that down just a little bit further. Alright, see if we can get this spring out of there. This one has I don't know if you've ever seen these, they go inside a spring to give it a little bit of, I don't know if it lifts it, but it keeps it from sagging quite as much. This one comes out a little bit easier, I think because we're just down a little bit lower, but that was pretty easy. There doesn't seem to be a specific way of getting these in. It's better than another. Other than we kind of have to get it in the top, index it in the top first. And then usually it's, because it's very deep up there. There we are. That was actually a lot easier than the last one was. Yep, that didn't work. Problem with it is that the force of the spring wants to push it back out, and we're trying to compress it and then push it back in, which doesn't always work. So it doesn't always, usually doesn't work. Hence, therein is the problem. If I can get it the other way just a little bit, it'll pop into place. But the tension on it tries to push it the other way. And we have success. All right. Time to go for a ride, see if our work paid off. For those of you who don't know, you might notice that the car is sitting a little bit higher in the back. And if you look at the rear wheel, hopefully you can see it in this picture, the wheels are kind of, the bottom is kind of in, or kind of a, I guess you'd say that's a negative camber. For those of you who don't know, and maybe some of you who do, it's kind of interesting. The rear wheels on the Corvair, hopefully you can see that, come in. They're like that right now mainly because we had them jacked up and set them down in that position. But that was one of the reasons why Ralph Nader didn't like these cars, or at least he said they were bad. It was because if you were in some type of an accident or a sideways turn, you could very easily fold the tire. At least it was his belief that you could very easily fold the tire underneath and maybe roll the car. But that'll settle down once we get out on the road and start driving a little bit. They'll roll back to their right position. Nope, can't have that. Car also doesn't turn very tight. Before, I was a kid, but before, they threw the shocks. The shocks, yeah, no bushings in them. I showed them the videos. And every time I go up, if I sound the word here, they'll have badly. And while I'm the first gear to get outside, my wife would try to use any extra things. So she would get my hands on it. So hopefully that's not probably hurts to drive fights. Really rough somewhere. There's a little bit of noise. There's actually noise in the here for 1963, it's what, 5 years. Get some good bumps here going into the driveway. Not hearing anything there. Like I said, everything I'm hearing is inside the car here, so. Got new shocks and rear springs on it. Not hearing a clunk. The tires have settled down to where they need to be. Maybe just a tad higher than they were before. It's looking good and sounding good. We're going to sign off right here, and maybe sometime in the future we'll hopefully get a list out there as to what shows this car has been on and the other toys, the Carmen Ghia and the El Camino. But for right now, we'll see you soon.